Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman, live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about a very important statement issued by none other than the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto. He is in America, as we all know. He was giving an interview to Christiana Manpur in her show. And in fact, one of the major issues that is again very much there and needs to be looked into is the Afghan issue. And he said, well, the Afghan soil is still being used against Pakistan, and it is up to the Afghan government to look after this particular issue. On the other hand, Mr. Bilawal also met the Secretary of State of the United States of America, his counterpart, Mr. Blinken, and discussed on expanding partnership regarding climate, trade, investment, health, and people-to-people contact. So these are the major areas that were discussed during the meeting. We'll definitely talk further about that in our today's program. And other than that, the foreign minister has also urged the international community to step up humanitarian support to Afghanistan. Situation isn't that great out there. There is a lot of shortage regarding food, medicine, health facilities, so on and so forth. And Afghanistan again is descending into poverty that is not good for the region, and especially for a country like Pakistan, which is the neighbor of Afghanistan. So we'll be talking about these major areas. But before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has picked up a very interesting soundbite of the foreign minister. Let's hear that out first.
We in the international community are emphasizing the importance to the new regime in Afghanistan, that they live up to international commitments, be it vis-a-vis terrorism or more specifically, their commitments to women's education and the education of girls in Afghanistan. And we feel if they live up to international commitments, it would be easier for us and others to fight the case for an increased support for humanitarian efforts and a stabilization of the Afghan economy. As far as recognition is concerned, we are working with the international community, and we'll take those decisions in step, in line with the international community. At the same time, we continue to advocate for engagement, and particularly in light of the humanitarian crisis developing in Afghanistan. We believe it is not good for the people of Afghanistan, and it's not good for the region or indeed the international community if 95% of the people of Afghanistan descend into poverty. Now, within the Pakistani context, this definitely informs my outlook, not only domestically and internationally. And while dealing with the realities, the ground realities of the situations in and around us, combating extremism, combating terrorism, spreading the peaceful, progressive message of Islam, advocating for human rights, for women's rights, for democracy, are incredibly important to myself and my party and form the basis of our manifesto. And we will continue to do so in whatever capacity we find ourselves in. At the moment, there's a unity government in Pakistan where all political parties have come together to push electoral and democratic reforms. And despite our diverse opinions, outlooks, and manifestos, in the larger national interest, we have come together to pull our country out of a multitude of crises, including a threat to our democracy, our economy, and obviously the threat of extremism and terrorism.
So that was the foreign minister, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto. Now to talk about this, we have with us in our studio on my right is Farukh Amil Saab, former ambassador, former chair of OIC, Geneva. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. And we have with us Dr. Professor Zafar Nawaz Jaspal Saab, expert on foreign affairs and international relations. Dr. Saab, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you very much for your time. And we also have with us on Skype Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodhi, former defense minister. General Saab, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you very much for your time. Now, sir, since the new government is in place, and interestingly, it's a unity government, as the foreign minister just mentioned, when it comes to the Afghan issue, sir, I think there was something perhaps wrong as far as dealing with the issues concerned, sir. We all thought that the regime is there. Now it seems to be a very friendly regime, and most likely there's going to be a check on the cross-border terrorism, and perhaps nothing is going to happen inside Pakistan. But sir, ever since, let's talk about post 15th of August, the day the Kabul fell, we have witnessed that the attacks on our soldiers, on civilian targets, they have increased over a period of time. And we have lost so many soldiers recently, along with so many army officers and civilians as well. Now, sir, in order to put a check on the particular issue of terrorism, it seems that there isn't much cooperation from the regime. A lot of people still believe that the TTP Pakistan was a splinter group, was a part and parcel of the current regime, and perhaps they're not willing to go after them. Let's start off from that point, sir.
Well, thank you very much. The first thing I'd like to say, and your original point was, I think there's always been a national consensus as far as Pakistan-Afghanistan relations are concerned, and I think after August 15th that Pakistan had a set of expectations just like the international community, but you've also got to remember that the Taliban administration, the regime, whatever you want to call it, has capacity issues. Remember, it has been hobbled by the fact that their whatever limited assets, a few $1 billion, was withheld from them, and then half of it was siphoned off, and that's a completely different story. So they've probably got their own axe to grind. But in terms of terrorism, I mean, Pakistan's been the victim, everybody knows this, and it's completely unacceptable, any increase in terrorism. And you and I can sit here, have a conversation, go back to our homes, but who is actually paying the price? It is the Jawans, it's the army officers, it is the police, and therefore we really need to have this on our front foot forward. And I think the Foreign Minister, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, has been very clear in his the issues that he's been dealing with. Of course, this is just one of the issues in New York. It's not the main issue. Of course, the Americans have moved away in, at least visibly, they've gone. But they naturally will retain an interest. There is an element, as we said on your shows before, that you own it now, so you better deal with it. But if we can't deal with it on our own, why? Because it is a humanitarian crisis. And several months ago, I've been saying on this show that those people, the Afghan girls and boys and women and children, it's a humanitarian crisis. The other problem for the Afghans is that the Ukraine issue, the war in Ukraine, has consumed global attention and global, let's say, generosity for refugees and humanitarian assistance.
But Ambassador Saab, even prior to this Ukrainian war, there wasn't any coverage in media, especially in the Western media, regarding Afghanistan. But whenever you switch on any Western channel, sir, from A to Z, the only story they're talking about is Ukraine.
That's right.
So this is again the priority of the West as well.
That's right. So therefore, I think what the foreign ministers had to say in New York is absolutely critical. Of course, it's under the greater umbrella of the food security and all the other issues, climate change and everything that's affecting us. But remember, he is the current foreign minister is a victim of terrorism. He lost his mother, his siblings. These young people would know what it means to be.
They've gone through that pain.
Yes, they've gone through. So it's a very personalized thing, and I think he's quite rightly outlined what his political party has always spoken about: human rights and girls' education. That has been completely and consistently on the top of their agenda. But at the same time, if Pakistan has to deal with the Taliban administration or the regime, who else would Pakistan deal with? I mean, this is the question for everybody. Who would Pakistan
to talk to? Yeah.
Yes. So, would you want the previous lot who escaped on planes and disappeared? I mean, how do you deal with them? So they are a reality. But the thing is, for us, any act of terrorism, any one precious Pakistani life lost, is absolutely unacceptable for Pakistan. And I think the army chief at this Shahada event a couple of days back, he said it very clearly about the sacrifices that the soldiers and the military and the police are making to keep you, me, and this entire country safe from terrorism. And of course, you have to engage. You have to be on the international platform. And of course, if you're at the UN, talking about food security, talking about other things, but this gave the Foreign Minister, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, the opportunity to meet a whole host of people, other foreign ministers. So it wasn't just that he had a meeting with Secretary of State Blinken. He met many of the foreign ministers. He met with the PGA. He met with, of course, with the UN Secretary General, where he must have impressed upon him the need for humanitarian assistance, because you need that to stabilize that country. Once you stabilize it, then the Taliban may listen. But in the meantime, we have a red line. We must have a red line with whoever's in charge in Kabul. You will not attack and kill our citizens or soldiers or anybody in this country.
All right, that's a very valid point. Now, Dr. Saab, importance of the US-Pakistan cooperation as far as the regional peace is concerned, I think that is very important. It seemed that that cooperation wasn't there during the last couple of years, I would say, sir, and especially once the Americans, they left Afghanistan. Do you think, sir, this particular visit is going to pave way forward for proper engagement and at least something meaningful?
I think that one cannot be too much optimistic from this visit, because the American policy will be, you can say, led by the trends in the international and regional politics. The problem with the Pakistanis is that we always start looking with the visits and start expecting more without realizing that what is the worth or what is the time. So we use our geopolitical importance or geostrategic location in a manner when it was suits to them. Even at that time, the Americans were whatever assisting us, they were assisting us with a lot of checks and balances. They were giving lesser, talking more, and alleging again. Within the United States, there is not a mood to assist Pakistan at the moment. Second is, the Americans are, as you rightly pointed out in the beginning, that they are more focused on the Ukraine. And they have a success is what they desire there. Not only, it's a debatable whether they are desiring a real success of the Ukrainian, but they are desiring what you have seen NATO expansion, the way Russians have been bogged in, $30 billion US Congress bill is there for the support of Ukraine. NATO is now becoming more stronger. America's presence within the Europe is becoming more strong. So they are looking with that strategic objectives. Now here, on the one side, we expect a lot from the Chinese. And I think with the Russians, it's not a one government. Structurally, our relations improved. Though there were baby steps, but they structurally improved. And then, in a manner, structurally, the relations between the India and United States strategic partnership, more than that, the bilateral relations have been, you can say, going up. So, in such a situation, expecting too much is not correct. Second is that whether stability suits to the Americans in Afghanistan or instability suits to the Americans in Afghanistan. This is a very important question. If you go with the realpolitik and with that sort of understanding, in the neighborhood of Russia, where if there's instability in Afghanistan, Russian soft belly will be always vulnerable.
Oh yes.
Chinese soft belly will be always vulnerable. Pakistanis who are not accepting something from the American dictates, they are vulnerable. CPEC, BRI, all these things will be vulnerable. So why you expect that, and it is a wrong perception that the American foreign policy is dictated by their values. No, American foreign policy is dictated by their clear interest. These values are on leave. If somebody was saying during the election campaign with the Biden, or let's say these Democrats, when they will be back, values will be back. No, I'm not seeing this, anything there. I'm only seeing there that there's more investment in the military-industrial complex, there's more investment in the conflict, there's more investment in encouraging and strengthening the military alliances. In such a situation,
just to safeguard their own interest.
They have their own interest. And second is, I have here a little bit to add what Ambassador already said. Similarly, Taliban, maybe a capacity problem. What is their intention? Intention is more important. Are they interested to control, really interested to control Taliban, or they are interested to blackmail us with that Taliban? We have to make a clarity with them. This is a very important, and Talibans are thinking themselves in a different league, that they were successor. There was something, though we were very much comfortable or we are very much pleading their case internationally, but we have to go for an alternative thinking. Then we have to go out of this box thinking. This 4 decades policy on Afghanistan need to revisit with the new realities, with the new things, and then deal with it. And then, of course, finally, if we are not going to change our policy or rethinking, I mean, then definitely we are paying the price of young soldiers every day.
All right. Now coming to you, General Saab, a couple of points. I'm sure you have heard what Ambassador Saab said and then what Professor Saab also added. Currently, sir, is this General Saab being the former defense minister, being the former defense secretary? Obviously, you know a lot that a common man doesn't know. But what my question now is, sir, is this what you were expecting? Because earlier we all thought, and even including yourself, we thought that the regime is going to be very friendly and perhaps things will improve between Pakistan and Afghanistan. But now, sir, whatever is happening, and again the Afghan soil is being used against our country to basically to destabilize it. What needs to be done? There was this sort of an action inside the Afghan border, and there was a lot of retaliation from the Taliban government as well as from the people out there. Sir, your take. Jansa, please unmute the computer, sir, the volume.
Am I audible
Yeah, perfect.
now?
Perfect,
Thank you very
clear.
much.
Clear, sir.
Thank you very much. I was saying that a very good review has been given to us by the Excellency and also Dr. Jaspal. First of all, I think we must appreciate that as a debut, our foreign minister has done a good job. His body language, he was confident, and there was no loose talk. Everything was according to the mannerism, and so this needs to be appreciated because he's a young man, and this is his first assignment, and he has done well. Secondly, I think whatever he has said is continuation of the earlier policy of Pakistan. As far as recognition is concerned, as far as what we expect from Afghanistan and what we expect from America and the West. But I will agree with Dr. Jaspal once he says that the niceties of the sayings and statements, it is good, but the actual reality must be kept in mind. One, in my opinion, also, you should not expect any good from America and the West for the present regime of Afghanistan. I mean, they might be having some soft corner for the people of Afghanistan, which I have not seen. I have not seen that soft corner while they were here for 20 years, and I have not seen that soft corner while they are away for the last whatever time. My assessment was, and you have rightly pointed out, I always said in your program more than once that this present regime would at least require 2 years for political stability and 6 years for economic stability. This was my rough guess. So far it is about a year or whatever it is, nearing it. So the thing is that, but I also agree on this thing that we have a red line that the Excellency was saying. It is not possible that whatever happens to us and whatever happens to our soldiers, we'll just keep quiet. We are a power to reckon with, at least as compared to Afghanistan. So you must have also noticed that after those strikes which you mentioned, there was a certain calm as far as these things are concerned. Of course, the BLA attacks and these are different altogether, and they are sponsored by and the direction is different, and it is altogether a different thing. But the TTP attacks are on the whole for the time being. So I think we have to be firm, but still we must remember one thing, that instead of saying that we are waiting for the national community to international community to do something for the Afghans, I think we should concentrate more on the regional community, the Central Asian countries, China, Iran, Russia, Pakistan. These are the countries, those who have stakes in the peace in Afghanistan, and not the ones from which we are expecting. So we can say that international community, but in reality we must know that which are the countries who really want peace in Afghanistan. And I think not only that we need to expect things from this Afghan regime, we also need to help the Afghan regime not only in the economic sense and in the food and medical sense, but also to strike some harmony within the three tiers, that is the spiritual tier and the field commanders and the foot soldiers. Uh, this is a little disharmony is being witnessed, and nowadays we can see that there is a stalemate, which would, I think, I would urge Pakistan, China, Central Asian countries, they should form a group, a pressure group, and they should put a sort of pressure on this Afghan regime that please call, whether it is Jirga or whatever you want to do, and sort out your matters so that we can overcome all these things. One thing I would like to point out, because you said in your intro that the attacks on Pakistan have increased. True, these attacks have increased compared to what? Compared to what time we were talking about? Compared to the time once America and Karzai were here, or America and Ashraf Ghani were here. Take out that time once there was an agreement between Afghan government, Afghan government, and the Americans.
Sir, Ashraf Ghani was always being very venomous when it comes to Pakistan.
True.
So we knew that this is going to happen. But when it comes to Taliban, everybody thought that Pakistan has played. Even the Americans blame us for their own failures in Afghanistan, sir. So if there is a regime in place, good, bad or ugly, that's a separate chapter. But they are there now. Whom to talk to, as earlier mentioned by Ambassador Saab also.
Right, true. So there are two things you must have noticed. One, we do understand that there is a nexus between Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and Taliban, Afghan Taliban. But even today, the talks are going on. They are trying their best to convince Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan that they should talk to Pakistan and not attack. And there is some sort of uneasy, peace which is, you can say, there. So once we say that the attacks have increased, please compare them with that time once blood was being spilled like water as far as Pakistani forces are concerned and Pakistani civilians are concerned. That is not there. So this statement is not correct, that after the Afghan regime the attacks have increased. No, they have actually decreased. But I am saying again, don't compare it with that era, which was the era once the Americans were going out and there was a simulation, some peace for some time. Of course, that time was very peaceful. But before that, we were facing a sort of time which we would never like to have it again. So we need to give more time, but also we need to cajole this Afghan government to do more as far as its neighbors are concerned, and also their internal things.
Ambassador, $9.5 billion were frozen, and that was the Afghan money. The Americans say that around $3.5 billion is going to be given to the victims of 9/11. Now, that doesn't make sense to me, at least, but if that money goes away, you're left with almost $6 billion, and we are not sure whether that money is going to be given back to the Afghan people or not. Earlier, the Afghan economy was totally dependent on the foreign aid. Now there's no foreign aid coming in, sir. Despite the fact that we hosted OIC conferences, and we tried our level best to make sure that things go smooth. But now, let's say a year from now, till the next summer, if things remain the same, sir, what do you expect? I mean, are you worried about the Afghan people? What exactly is going to happen? Should you expect that more refugees are going to pour into Pakistan? Perhaps these similar activities from the Afghan soil, they're going to continue. Because now we have also learned that not only TTP or Al-Qaeda, or for that matter other splinter groups, they have joined hands, but even organizations and banned organizations like BLA, for that matter, sir. Don't you think this is of prime concern now?
Of course it is, and I think I would fully agree with what the Honourable former Defence Minister just said. This was not a bilateral visit to the United States. This was a visit to a UN event that the United States had organized. We must be very clear about that. This, when the former Defence Minister said that expect no good, I would say I agree with him, I expect no sympathy. Because you see the Taliban won after this horrible war that took so much money and so many lives. So of course they're not going to be that. Why would we expect them to be listen to us? So when we talk about national interest, every country, I know Dr. Jaspal quite correctly pointed that out, every country follows its national interest, but at least they should do. And so the Americans would continue to follow their national interests, and their national interests right now are focused on Europe, they're focused on Asia Pacific issues, they're focused on China, of course, within the Asia Pacific. So of course, Afghanistan has not necessarily gone down the rung in terms of priorities. It's there, and I think that is why this visit by the foreign minister, by the new young foreign minister, was absolutely required, because of course he went for the food security summit, but he had to talk about this issue, to reflag this, to tell the Secretary General, to the UN, to say that look, there's as you've just said, a humanitarian crisis that is not going to happen, it's happening. And as it gets worse, of course, the ability of the Taliban regime or administration to effectively control, to run that country will diminish even more, and then therefore we can expect much more instability, and you know what instability means. And when we talk about splinter groups of terrorists, remember they all have fluid alliances. They can be ideological bedfellows on one issue, and they all move around. And it's not like they're regular armies. And therefore, these individuals are slipping, not just through the net, but slipping between allegiance to one group or to the other. So, of course, Taliban has to deal with the TTP for our sake as well, and we will deal with them. We absolutely have to, and I have no doubt in the Pakistan defense establishment's resolve to deal with it. But the important thing to remember is, and I think the foreign minister quite rightly said that the Taliban has to live up to international commitments. Oh, fair enough, they made many commitments, but also they have to live up to international expectations. So the United States expects something else, Sweden will expect something else, the Chinese will expect something else, we expect something much more, because we're right on the doorstep, having to deal with this terrorism. So the prognosis is, and I would again agree with Dr. Jaspal on this, it doesn't look that optimistic if the country is not stabilized through international assistance, humanitarian aid, because they don't want to do it for ideological reasons. And if they don't do it, then what is the I think it's a perverted objective to make them collapse.
The American government, they fought for 20 years with the Taliban till the time they were ready to negotiate. And Zalmay Khalilzad was appointed as the focal person to negotiate. Whatever happened in Doha, sir, we assisted. The Americans assisted, the Chinese, and the regime was there. So once they were negotiating, so obviously they knew that they'll be in power, number one. And secondly, because they fought against them for the last 20 years, so they're dragadrons as well. Number point is, sir, that if you have to deal with the Taliban, then deal. You should not expect too much that they will just convert Kabul into New York, or their culture is going to change overnight. So that is one aspect. But the second is, which is more important, is that why should they give money to a certain regime that is in place in Kabul,
that's right,
whom they have fought against? They have lost their soldiers as well. So, I mean, there seems to be a direct clash of interest.
But previously, the previous governments have always been saying, help the Afghan people, and Pakistan is quite rightly, even at the OIC meeting, had illustrated that the UN itself can be the conduit to give that humanitarian assistance. If anybody has any qualms or feels that, well, we don't want to give the money to the Taliban, they will deny girls education, they'll go back to their old bad ways, and we won't give it to them. So there are many mechanisms, through WFP, through FAO, through UNHCR, all the UN agencies.
But nothing is working because there is no organization.
But the thing is, the pathways through for this multilateral assistance exist, and therefore there's no reason why countries should hold back. The only thing is, yes, the world is undergoing a crisis, and there's just so much sympathy and so much money, and the focus is on Ukraine right now, and that is it. I mean, if you look at, we discussed this last time, look at how the Ukrainian refugees have been dealt with, and how non-European refugees have been dealt with. Not by everybody. Germany took 1 million, but the fact is that there is, for us, for Pakistan, we absolutely need to keep engaged with the Taliban, because if they go away or disappear, then we're back to a Somalia-like situation with fiefdoms, or what Libya is now. I mean, if you look at Libya, and
certain areas are controlled by one group.
Yeah, and is that in our interest? We have CPEC, we have the BRI. Does China want this? And I think the former defense minister is correct in this. We should be talking to the neighboring countries and looking at regional stakeholders. Yes, but do they have the financial capacity to assist? Iran is under all kinds of sanctions. China is, it has a complicated relationship.
Russia's already
stuck. Well, yeah, Russia is it's very much preoccupied with its own issues. So therefore, how do we move forward on this in terms of real tangible? The political thing, I think every government manages to deal with, but it's actually helping those the Afghan people through the multilateral agencies to stabilize them. Once they stabilize, it has to be it has to be that. You can't just abandon them and then expect them to have full control over all these various groups. And remember, and I must make this point, the departing powers and other interest groups, and the Leviathan next door, they've left their assets there. They have people there. They're not going to give up. And if they're supporting, you mentioned BLA and ISIS, they're not going to stop supporting them because they want to hurt Pakistan. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, there you go. Very valid point. Now, so when it comes to the American interest and the Chinese interest, we all know they have this issue, and when you talk about the American adversaries, whether it's Joe Biden's government or Donald Trump's government, they will pinpoint towards China and Russia. Russia, they have engaged there, sir. China, they are trying to, they are engaging it in terms of the Taiwan issue and all. But sir, when it comes to the Chinese expansion plan, the Americans have got some real concern there. Now, sir, in order to, work properly and efficiently on that particular plan of the Chinese, I'm talking about the BRI, Afghanistan needs to be stabilized. Sir, why would the Americans let it happen? A. And secondly, also throw light on this very important aspect that when you talk about, let's suppose, Pakistan, a country like Pakistan, sir, which has a strategic partnership with the Chinese, Indians have a strategic partnership with the Americans. We are trying to develop some sort of a relationship again. I mean, this is a jump start, I would say, which Mr. Bilawal Bhutto is going to give. So these clashes and mistrust factor and then clash of interest basically very clearly tells us that, if we are going to show our tilt towards the Chinese, the Americans are going to shy away. If we are tilting towards the Americans, the Chinese would definitely have multiple issues. What do you say?
Let me make it once again. I repeat what I said earlier, that we must not be too optimistic about this visit. And it was earlier, Ambassador, as the writer pointed out, it's not a bilateral. Is there courtesy call?
But he had a meeting
but
with
the meeting. Simple meeting doesn't make anything. You need an agenda of the meeting. You need a proper preparation of the meeting. Naturally, he's a foreign minister, young foreign minister, a chairman of a Pakistan People's Party, a big name. Is there in a meeting, courtesy call. These are normal things. It's not a bilateral scheduled meeting for some things. Number one is there clear. Second is the scenario which you portrayed is very correct scenario. And in that context, this is very interesting now. So, Pakistan, China, and the Russia, which I can include, or other the neighboring states of Afghanistan, first time they are on one page. And that page is transform Afghanistan's stature from a buffer zone into a transit region. That is very important. Chinese are investing. They wanted to transit. Russians want. Earlier, till 90s or 80s, 90s I can say, we wanted Afghanistan as a buffer. Russians wanted Afghanistan as a buffer. Earlier, historically, Afghanistan was much. So that's why it was a victim of the geopolitical tussles, geostrategic contest. Now, at least for today, Afghanistan neighbors or the states which are in this region, maybe except India, they are desiring that this, we don't need a buffer zone there, we need a transit region, we need a connectivity. That's why we are talking about Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan train, CPEC, they want to link. Chinese have investment, they announced $400 billion US with Iran. It's not only that it's infrastructure basically which was earlier Americans, Indians and Iranians indirectly conceived for a northern corridor, starting from Mumbai, Chabahar, Zadal, Kandahar and Hajika. Now it will be reverse side. So if this is a very important thing, now if it become a transit area, then it will be not suitable, as you said, since 2017 or even before. Americans' national security strategy of 2017, defense strategy, Indo-Pacific strategy, all these documents till today, they categorically couple. They say, number one threat is China, Russia. And then second is terror. For us, number one threat is, of course, India is there, but number one threat is now, here's also what we call since 2012, we are saying it, militancy, radicalized militancy.
Absolutely.
And if there is a stability in Afghanistan, then there will be a lesser chance of this stability, radicalized militancy. And if there is an instability, there will be Daesh, there will be Islamic State of, you can say, Eastern Turkestan, there will be XYZ, TTP, there will be more support for them. So this is number one which we have to take into account. Second important thing in this context is when we are looking about this regional constructs, and on the basis of that we are viewing it, that we want, and it's a wrong thing to say that Taliban have no, Taliban was a political force from 1994. Yes, they were shifted into insurgency from 2001, but still they have a connectivity. They are sons of the soil. If I'm not happy with their policy vis-a-vis Pakistan, but generally these are the realities. In the last 2 decades, Americans failed to develop even a single institution there. Their entire assistance or money was only for their own. American assistance, if you see, it's now 60 to 70% move out of Washington. Then their own contractors. That was very interesting. Emirates had increased the business, you can say, class, which was flying an aircraft from the way to, you can say, Kabul. Why all these business tycoons are there who were paid in dollars and they were there? That was salaries for their own contractors, their own NGOs, their own, not for Afghan people. If there was for Afghan people that
Things
money,
would have been a lot different now.
that will be a lot of difference.
Even they would have spent $5 billion on the infrastructure of Afghanistan during the last, let's say, 20 years.
And they destroyed infrastructure as well.
That's what I'm saying.
They destroyed it. So we have to not here say that this Taliban regime, they have no organizational structure, or they don't have an experience of the governors, they don't know how to deal with the economic. They are. But of course, they are the victors. And unfortunately, the victors of the war who are begging for economics. Normally, victors of the war have their own dimension, own opportunities. And second is, they are victor against a mighty power. Luckily, it's their good luck that mighty power is now engaged somewhere else. That's why maybe there will be lesser sort of thing. In a way, we are thinking that the Americans are now fatigued of supporting the humanitarian. Why? Because they are there? No. They will never support the humanitarian. They will support only there where their interest will be served. And they will be right. I do not blame them. And here, we in Pakistanis are always looking Mano Salwa. Previous government, this government, that something will happen, some breakthrough will be there. We have to be very careful about these things. And frankly speaking, the world which we witnessed after 1990, for 5 years, that was different. But we are living with that hangover. From 96, when Rumsfeld Commission report came on the missile defense system, and when the things started moving, and China was declared the academic circle as a strategic peer in the 1998 onward, and then the 9/11, the world is same. We are now back in the circle. The military circles, we are traditional security circles.
Correct.
Here we use the word geoeconomics, we use the word human security, we use the food security. These are good issues. But the state policies or the great powers policies are determined by their military interest. And in that military
So
interest,
whether
that
it's
is
the
where-
government of the Republicans or the
Whosoever.
government of the
on
Democrats, it
Afghanistan,
won't make any difference.
Faisal, on Afghanistan.
Their policy was very consistent. Yes.
Read the Trump policy, read the Biden policy. If you find out any shift, except maybe one or two words, which Ambassador Saab maybe know better than me, any shift practically you will, I owe you.
So, quick comment and then I'll go to Jan Saab on the same point. Sir.
On this point, of course, there has been a difference because the former President Trump always said that he would extract America from wars. I mean, he made that very clear in his presidential campaign before, during all the debates. He said, "I will end wars," and he actually was doing that. And the Biden administration is, I mean, you just have to look at what Obama was doing as well. I mean, how many wars were they fighting? And how many wars were they starting? So I think there is a
context of Afghanistan, sir.
but
Context of Afghanistan.
yes, but there's a huge difference. The difference is that that Biden had kept on Khalilzad. They continued to work with. They were negotiating themselves out of the equation, at least publicly. But I think there was an absolutely very different view about how to deal with global problems. And here I would beg to differ. And that is that if you hear what the British Foreign Secretary, well, the Foreign Minister, the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss has been saying, she's been talking about global NATO. What does that mean? That it's not just, of course, it's Ukraine, it's Asia-Pacific theatre, but it's here as well.
Quad is there.
Yes,
It's
the Quad is there,
the Quad and
AUKUS is
AUKUS,
there.
but global NATO. I mean, this is now, an emerging, at least a discussion point now. So, of course, they have their national interest, and Trump was not downsizing NATO, but he was very different from Biden.
All right. Now, Jan Saab, coming to you, I would love to hear a comment from you regarding this current, topic that is about the difference between the Republicans or the Democrats and the approach regarding Afghanistan. But at the same time, sir, I also want you to throw light on this very important aspect, like our Chief of Army Staff, General Bajwa. In fact, when they were talking about the national security policy, they did mention about the food security, water security, climate change, and so on and so forth. But, sir, one important area, yes, forget about the internal security or external security, but, sir, that was about the transformation from geopolitics to geoeconomics. That is not possible, sir, unless and until there is peace in Afghanistan. General Saab?
Much on the difference of policies of Biden and Trump. Excellency has covered it very well. But as far, I would like to make one point before I come to that General Bajwa's point, and that is now there is a consensus, at least amongst all three of us, that Pakistan is the most affected country as far as Afghan situation is concerned. If that be so, then Pakistan trying to team up or rely on such countries who do not have the same level of interest in Afghanistan is an absurd policy. This is what I have gathered from today's discussion. We need to follow our own interest, and if it is in our interest to go single-handedly or go with two countries or with three regional countries and have more deeper and intimate relations with the present regime, or others. So I think we should do that, and we should not wait, especially for those who do not have the same level of interest as far as we are concerned. So that is important. Now, talking about this geostrategy, geoeconomy, and geopolitics, I'm always of the view, and you have always supported me, that these are intertwined, my dear. There is no such thing that geoeconomy. Now we will focus on geoeconomy. How can you focus on geoeconomy if your geopolitics is not good, or if your geostrategy is not good? So I think if you have good relations with countries, which is geopolitics, and if you are in a position to help other countries or harm other countries, which is geostrategy, only then your economy will improve, which is geoeconomy. So this theory I've never understood, that now we will follow geoeconomy and this will be lead. I've never subscribed to this theory, and I've never understood this thing. Thank you.
All right, Jan Saab, thank you very much, sir, for your presence. Thank you very much, Professor Saab. Thank you so much, sir, for your time as well. And that's all we have for this I'll see you inshallah on Monday at 8:05 p.m. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.